What would you do with an additional $11,000 a month in cash flow? It sounds pretty life-changing to me. Welcome to another episode of How I Started. My name's Noah Bacon, and today I'm joined with Garrett Brown. Garrett got started in flipping and quickly transitioned into short-term rentals and has been absolutely crushing it. I can't wait for you to hear about how Garrett did it and how you can start to think outside of the box in your own real estate portfolio. Garrett, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I gave it away in the intro. You obviously started in flipping, but can you tell me why that was your entry point into investing into real estate?
I've been a realtor for almost 7 years now, and I think the thing about flipping, it was just the opportunities were there a lot more than some of these other ones. Flipping kind of is just like it's a natural start for a lot of people because you can get experience pretty quickly, and also, there's a lot of rundown houses or other houses that you can always see, and it kind of just sparks a lot of ideas, and HGTV and all that made it pretty popular too. So,
well, I think getting started in real estate is really scary for a lot of people, and the big barrier to entry for a lot seems like the most scary. Can you tell us how much you had saved at that time for a down payment for your first property?
I didn't have a whole lot. I probably was an agent for at least 3 or 4 years before I jumped into my first flip, and I probably had around $30,000 to $35,000 on my first one that I saved up over a few years, just pinching pennies and figuring out different ways I can increase my income, and also being very smart with my housing expenses and other expenses.
Awesome. So $30,000, can you tell us how far that money went and what you closed on your first deal and what that kind of looked like on the financing side for us?
So the first deal, I started small. I live in Houston now, but I'm from a smaller town about an hour away from Houston. So the price point in some of that area is much lower. I was able to get into a property. We were able to buy it for around $115,000. I used a hard money lender to help me out on some of the funds that I couldn't cover, and they were able to cover a lot of the rehab materials and the labor and things like that to help out. And then we were able to end up selling it in the $240,000 range once we put about $50,000 into it. Once we were able to recoup all our costs, got it sold, we ended up profiting between me and my partner, who brought some cash to the table too. I walked away with probably about an extra $30,000, and I got my initial investment back.
It sounds like an absolute home run for your first deal. And, flipping is a very common intro that we see for a lot of people, but your story is extremely unique because you started in flipping, found success. And it's funny because we were just talking about all the different strategies you can get into with real estate, and you went into short-term rentals. Can you tell us about what that transition was like and what got you really interested into going into STRs?
Flipping, there was some success. I don't want to build it up like it was just this amazing thing for me, because I also had a lot of losses that came through flipping too, which is one of the reasons why I started to pivot and try to see what are some other things out there in real estate. And then, as we were mentioning earlier, like once you go down that rabbit hole, you have 50 different choices that you could, be a part of in real estate. And I have a background. I went to school for hotel and restaurant management at University of Houston here. And I've always had an interest in, using my creativity. And I think short-term rentals is probably the prominent place in real estate. You can really use your creative juices and ideas to, boost the design and bringing people in. So I started to dabble in the lower end of Airbnb with, 1-bedroom condos that weren't that special. A couple smaller things in Houston, and then after I kind of got going a little further, I started getting further into it and went to the short-term rental side, more particularly a side called Glamping, which is basically glamorous camping, glorious camping, whatever you kind of want to call it. So, which is a segment of short-term rentals, but in the end, there's a lot of hospitality and things and the real estate side that all go into it. So they kind of worked hand in hand for me.
So let's hear about some of the numbers on that glamping side, because I know for a lot of people, we've probably been on the guest side of glamping, but hearing an owner's perspective of glamping, I want to get into some of the nitty gritty with you on that. Can you tell me what that looks like for you today and what you were doing to think about a glamping site?
One thing that's good about glamping, and I personally liked how I mixed it with, the real estate side as well. I was able to do a thing that, a couple different people have coined land hacking, where you're able to get a lower mortgage. Because most places, if you have raw land, a lot of glamping site owners, they'll buy raw land. They want to set up some tiny cabins, some teepees, something along those lines. But it's so hard to get loans on raw land and all these structures we're trying to build. And I knew that it's a very cash intense business up front. Having the ability to get a mortgage on a house with some acreage around it, I was able to get a house that was with 11 acres on it and about an hour from Houston in an area called Lake Livingston, which is a pretty prominent vacation area for, people of Houston and different areas. We were able to get the house and land for $550,000. I was able to live in it for a year using an owner-occupied loan. I was able to put 5% down on that loan. I was able to save all that cash, and I was able to build my first glamping, structure, which is a geodesic dome, which between utilities and the structure, and we went full on grid. We're a commercially permitted facility. We spent about $100,000 to build that out with driveways, everything that goes into that. There's a lot of things that people underlook when they're building the sites out. By getting that owner-occupied loan to begin with, I got a house that needed some renovation. It was in decent shape. It was still in a great area and great house, but it needed some renovation. So I lived in it for the year. I was able to, do some updates myself. I believe I consider myself semi-handy on some projects. And then I also was able to get, different people to help me, update the bathrooms and all that. So now the house is probably worth about $650,000 by itself now from all the work we put into it. And this was over a year and a half that I lived in, and we probably put $20,000 into the house, new AC, different bathrooms. But there's my equity play. But then at the same time, I used all that cash I saved. Instead of having to put 25% down on an investment property, I built that geodome. And so then instantly we were able to rent the geodome and our ranch house after about probably a year and a half once they were all fixed up and built. And then once we were able to do that, they started cash flowing pretty quickly, especially the geodesic dome. The house still rents quite a bit as well and brings in, profits and pretty much covers the mortgage every month. And then after that, the geodome is straight cash flow from, everything else that we spend on it and, paying back some of our, initial upfront money that we put up for it. And now we've just gradually expanded. We've added a mirror house towards the back of the property, and we went in, buying the property with the plan of having at least 3 to 4 structures. And that's one thing people tend to overlook when they're, doing projects like this. They think like, okay, I'm just going to buy some land and put one structure on it. If they took the time to think about like, hey, maybe in 10 years, am I going to want, more structures on the land? Because you'll save a lot of money up front by planning like that. And, to get permits, it's usually better to be upfront about what you're going to do with it than, kind of try to hide like how many you're actually going to get, especially if the county finds out about you or how popular you become. So we've added a mirror house. We're adding more structures. We've probably spent about $150,000 building everything. We gross revenue about $25K a month. We spend about 12 to 13 in expenses. And there's a few other things we hold back, but then we're usually profiting about $10,000 a month, 10 to 11 on a good month, which most months have been very good. There's probably one slow month we have a year. We know what it is, and we just want to keep expanding. We pretty much invest all the money that we get back into the site to keep raising the rates and also just keep increasing the exposure to it.
That's amazing. It sounds like you've implemented so many of the strategies that we hear about. You essentially did a land hack, basically, a live and flip. You've gotten your hands on it, and you've had a background in your education to get into hospitality, so you knew what the management was going to look like, basically, from your 4 years of bachelor's, essentially. It all sounds very complex, but when you boil it down for us, you made it sound really simple. And if somebody wanted to follow in your footsteps, what would be some advice that you'd give for them to, go and buy out that glamping site that you maybe stayed at as an Airbnb as a guest, and you're like, how the heck does the owner own something like this? Can you tell us what somebody could kind of follow your path?
There's a lot of people online sometimes that make it as this super simple business that you kind of just, like I said, slap a tent up and you're making $500-$600 a night and things like that. So I do want it up front. There is definitely a lot of time and effort it's going to take from the individual, unless you just have an extremely high budget or a lot of money backing you where you can pay somebody to manage a lot of it. You're definitely going to have some boots on the ground and your eyes on a lot of things. And then at the same time, it's a lot of cash up front. So if you don't have disposable cash, probably $100,000 to maybe a little less to get into some of these, depending on how luxury you want to go. It's something that you might either want to have to partner with somebody, or you might want to look into trying to, get some experience with another camping site or a glamping site and maybe an RV park or something like that, because or, try to co-host, because this is going to be something that if you don't have that cash and that experience, like I was lucky enough to have in some of these fields, and me being a real estate agent, that saved me. I was able to visit so many sites over like 8 months. So there was a lot of advantages I had. So that's why I recommend, like, don't be afraid to be an understudy somewhere, or just try to get involved with somebody somewhere to say, hey, can I, come work at your site? Do you need help? Can I just come and volunteer? Learn some of the ins and outs, and then you'll be able to really know what kind of, what structures do better, what structures have a lot of maintenance to them that you didn't expect. Like even my geodome, it does great, but there's a lot of maintenance things I didn't expect to it. And there's a lot of little things that you may not expect to be coming, but if you're dedicated enough and you really love the creative passions, you like being outdoors and providing unique experiences, this is going to be a great way for you to get into a business that has a lot of growth. It's one of the biggest growing segments of hospitality. And I definitely think the opportunities are there for the people that are hungry enough to really put the time and effort in to learn this segment.
And you've clearly put in your time and effort into it, and it shows your drive as well. And can you tell me what you've really learned from it? And, can you kind of tell me what you would want to do to kind of expand the site, improve your cash flow, or are there some things you're looking to make improvements? Can you talk to me about that, what you're doing actively today on the site?
One of the main things I've been a big fan of is constantly reinvesting into the site. There are a lot of the bigger real estate people in these different segments. They all preach that, and I can definitely attest to that. Even if we talk about like the marketing side, I do a lot of marketing, but one of the main things I think about marketing wise is the amount of money I reinvest into the site is a new piece of marketing. Like even not long ago, we put an outdoor shower at one of the units and put some fake flowers around, spent maybe $300 to $400 on it. Everybody that has stayed recently has been sharing videos of that. And so it's doing free marketing for me. So I basically, and next we're going to add a pool table to one of the outdoor sites. And I know that that's going to go viral and have, marketing from a lot of people. And so the money I spend into that, that's money that I would normally maybe put into Google ads or something, but those real live amenities are what really draw people in. And we just keep wanting to evolve, keep making new creative spaces. We've talked about building more sites on our actual land. We got wrecked not long ago by a flood that, was a historical flood in our area, ruined some of the land that we were actually going to build on, but it hasn't, it definitely was not something we were happy about, but it hasn't stressed us too much, because then we pivoted and we're like, we're just going to make these sites that we already have to get as high of an average daily rate as we can. We're looking into keep putting amenities into the house, keep making the house nicer, and then, eventually try to see what an exit plan may be if we want to, sell the business as a whole, which is pretty much how these type of things sell, and see what the next step is from there. But right now we love everything we have going on, and love the creativity and the ability to provide these experiences to people that they can't get elsewhere.
That was awesome, my friend. It's such an aspiring journey to see of yours. And what's one piece of advice that you could give somebody that was in your shoes, 5 years ago when you were starting out as a realtor, starting out flipping homes before, you really found your niche and really found what I hate to call it your calling, but with your hospitality background, it seems like this was the perfect ride for you. Can you talk about what a rookie investor should be doing to create some of these habits that they could follow in your footsteps?
I've kind of touched on before, and also not to sound too cliche, but I learned so much off of BiggerPockets, like in general. When I found that site, it really was kind of life-changing for me, because it's really opened my mind to how real estate can play out. I always was just like, I'm a real estate agent. I'm going to sell a house. I'm going to buy a house, and I got to, find a new client today. But there's just so many avenues, which is, exploring those options has been amazing. But don't be afraid to find an understudy. I've said that multiple times, but it's very true. I never got satisfied with what I knew, and I always was looking to learn more. And then I also would just jump into the fire and put, make it happen sometimes. And a lot of times it may come back and bite me in the butt. And I took a few losses with flipping. There's a few times I lost my earnest money and made bad decisions on my own. I could have, given up and, tucked my tail between my legs and went home, but I fell off the horse and got back up one more time each time. And that's kind of how I've lived life. And each time, one of my favorite quotes is winners never quit. You only fail when you quit. That's just kind of how I looked at it. And there'd be a lot of times where I was ready to give up, but there would be, something in me that would keep fighting, and I would just I would keep upping my education. I was never satisfied with where I was at. I was trying to really absorb everything like a sponge.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're going to have a lot of different, success in your portfolio moving forward. I know you're going to jump into a lot of different strategies as we talked about earlier. Garrett, I really can't thank you for your time today. You've been an amazing resource for our community here to share your story. Where can they learn a little bit more about you after this video airs?
I have a YouTube channel that I talk pretty much all things glamping and Airbnb that I go by Nice Flipping Choice. It used to be my flipping channel, and then obviously not anymore.
And I'm Noah Bacon. If you want to find me on BiggerPockets, you can search my name. You can go on there and find our abundance of resources that helped investors like Garrett and I get started. And if you even want to meet some fellow investors this year, we'll have a big meetup at BPCon 2024 down in Cancun. If you want to learn more, go to biggerpockets.com/events. Please like and subscribe to the BiggerPockets rookie channel and give this video a thumbs up, and we'll be sharing plenty of stories. Maybe not as exciting as Garrett's in a glamping site, but we'll be sharing a lot of stories about how rookie investors got started. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.